Sam Candle uploaded a video about content created for lolicons. To put this in simpler terms, lolicon basically means pedophile, lolly means child girl, shoto also refers to young boys. All of this is specifically in the context of OMG so kawaii Japanese culture, whereas these works are heavily fictionalized. Before we begin, a few points I want to make clear. For one, do not go and harass them, or send them death threats. What this person needs is therapy by their own admission, and what it seems to me, better friends. And to go outside. If you are going to go over there, no matter however infuriating it may be, don't just watch this video, listen to them as I did. Trust me, it makes things so much worse. And try to have a sophisticated conversation. Thank you, Windows. I will be playing clips of their video instead of linking it because I do not support them and what they are advocating for. I am also going to come out and say, I agree with their point. Put a tilde on that. Because before you dislike the video and report me to the authorities, my beliefs in the matter are vastly different to their values, and what they argue in is bad faith. I believe in works such as Lolita or Song of Saya. I believe they are okay and have the right to exist. Juxtapose that to whatever you or, this person finds on hentai and Hentai Haven, which I can tell you myself, 99.99 to 100% of those works serve no purpose or deeper meaning. Just to make this clear, but I obviously don't pleasure myself to either works, nor do I find them attractive. They make me want to puke equally. Besides, if I want to pleasure myself, that's what I have a girlfriend for. Am I right?
With writing, drawings, with whatever sort of medium art takes on, we can realize fantastical things that would never be able to be expressed or realized.
Your first sin isn't even something you say, but flashing Danganronpa is a poor example of your argument. There's virtually no benefit to having characters in almost all of the games be minors, instead of something like college students, with the exception of Ultra Despair Girls.
It nearly plays its concept entirely straight. It is, in essence, a mass shooting simulator, presented like a twin-stick shooter. I can acknowledge that it's not a perfect game, and as far as I know, it was created to just intentionally stir up controversy.
While I have problems dissecting your first argument, comparing fictional CSAM to Postal, therein lies your problem. And the reason you can only really go off of one sentence, these two are completely different subjects from one another. You cannot equate murder to pedophilia or the other way around. There is also a difference for this exact reason. One is gravely more easier to do, especially nowadays, than the other in the minds of sick freaks. Keep in mind that the Postal series has also been banned in countries before. Now, I'm not going to say I agree with that decision or not, but from what you say the developer's intention is, that being to piss people off, it bring no discussion to the table. It bring zilch. Just a heads up, this is going to be my argument, basically. What are the developer's intentions when making media that uses this? And does it do it in a meaningful way? Now, am I saying I didn't enjoy Postal? I liked it for a few minutes, but I'd be lying if I didn't understand why it wasn't banned.
A lot of people's impressions of certain cultures can be informed by art, like the super harmful gross stereotypes and Orientalism contained in Disney's Aladdin.
Comparing lolly, borderline CP content to older racist media, or even worse, propaganda, is unintentionally harboring hatred at best, or you just straight up strawmanning at worst. Once again, child exploitation is an entirely different subject to racism. Not only that, but you're pointing at one of the worst examples imaginable. Older Disney films have outdated principles now, yes, but they are children's films first and foremost that served a purpose and always have a message. What is the theme behind the fourth piece of lolly porn you jerked off to today? Nothing. Because again, they were created with no real purpose.
Or the military propaganda machine that is Call of Duty.
I can't believe I have to say this. Okay, comparing what you jerk off to, depictions of child assault, to Call of Duty is one of the most vicious insults anybody has come up with, and your video isn't even about me. Look, I hate Slap of Duty as much as the next guy, but what they're doing at least has a positive impact, or at least the message they're trying to get, which is that being to enlist people, compared to pedophiles, which not only bring no meaningful contribution to society, but actively hinders it. People are in the army to serve their country and to protect its people. They go around for this. They go around the world for this. Pedophiles daydream about how they're not just going to sexually hurt someone, but a kid. Someone whose brain is not even developed, who cannot think for themselves or defend themselves.
A dialogue about what here actually is harmful and what these works are trying to say. And that's whether it's a video game about killing people, a doujin about sex crimes, or a Disney movie.
For what these works are trying to say. What are these works trying to say? You just said yourself a minute ago that the original Postal was made as an edgy joke. Bringing up older Disney films has no correlation to what you're trying to say. Whatever you talk about for your sex crimes genuinely made me shiver, because without even watching the video, we both know there's going to be no deeper meaning, or at the very least, the only message you take away is that it's to pleasure yourself.
Many famous paintings and statues from the 1500s or earlier could be argued to be pornographic to some degree, but are we really going to claim the Venus of Urbino isn't art?
There is no comparison between a piece of artwork that was made as decor and the child porn show or manga you read to pleasure yourself with.
A very fitting example is the book Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, which happens to be where the lolly in lolicon comes from. Lolita is about, in short, an adult man who obsesses sexually over a 12-year-old girl. This book contains all the things that someone against the idea of lolicon would want to disallow. And
oh boy, okay. So I spent weeks analyzing and writing an essay on Lolita. The fact you're bringing it into this conversation tells me you hold no regard for genuine artistic talent or intent. In case I have to spell it out for you, there is a difference between this book and the doujinshis you consume. At every single point in the book, it is made abundantly clear that the main character / antagonist, Humbert, is an irredeemable monster. There is not an inkling, not a single time, that the story is made to appease these sick people with sick fantasies. If you take a closer look at what the author was trying to do, he wanted to explore the mindset of his abuser and try to come up with the justifications for what was done to him. What you read, listen to, or watch holds no artistic value and was made for the sole purpose of pleasuring. Trust me, I can tell you how each one of the stories you consume, whatever, are going to play out almost every single time. And sometimes they're even worse than Lolita in its repulsiveness.
should people who like the book for the wrong reasons be institutionalized?
Yes, they should. If they get turned on by child assault, then they need to seek professional help.
Trying to follow this logic to its conclusion is, well, it's just fascism.
Fascism is when something I like isn't allowed.
Do you genuinely listen to yourself? That's an actual question. The only time I've ever heard that point was from pedophiles, or what I guess we'll call them lolicons for you online. The problem with that is that these thoughts are dangerous. Why do you think there are clauses for therapists that they have the right to report you if you're threatening to harm yourself or others? That's not called fascism. That's caring for society. Sometimes you have to go to the rubber room. It sucks, but that really is just sometimes the best option.
The reality of lolicon is that it's supposedly putting children at risk by existing. That just by being available, it's going to hurt kids. This claim is, at the very least, unsubstantiated. And, if I'm being honest, blatantly false.
I'm not showing the anime clip they use in the video. Please, just use the PNG tuber image on the screen. You've done no favors at all whenever you use these visuals. And no, while that doesn't put the child at risk immediately, it exponentially increases the rate the danger happens. And this is all going to be even more ironic when you quote the study in just 1 second. I'm not going to play the audio just to save yourself. If you want, you can go watch the video, right? But the study you are quoting shows that you are lacking basic empathy and starts making this video come off way more as an own the Christians. This will make sense by the end. If you read to the end of what you are quoting, you made the conscious decision to include the word millions. Now, using basic inference skills, right? We are saying that in the location of wherever, right? The amount of kids who have been traumatized are comparable to the people lost in the Holocaust. That's also not to mention the cases that children stayed silent about. I also want to point out that this article was written almost 20 years ago. Times have changed drastically, and the introduction of the modern smartphone has made these crimes infinitely easier to commit.
You don't have to be interested in the elements of reality that form the art in order to have an interest in the art itself. The same way most furries do not have an actual sexual attraction to real animals.
Yeah, right. We're just going to stop this right there. As a furry, this next point is the definition of a straw man. There's literally zero, zilch, like negative comparisons between furries and pedophiles. One dresses up in weird costumes, the other actively wants to fuck kids. The furries who do create content more adjacent to zoophilia obviously should be investigated and seek.
Turn someone into a pedophile or a zoophile. These sort of paraphilias are something which is deep-seated into someone's brain.
This is highly argued against, although I acknowledge that it's more so the people versus those who study in the field, so I'm not trying to devalue their work. However, let's not forget that there are thousands of files about just this that the American citizens are focused on right now. How do you think they feel if you would just go up to them and say, oh, it's okay, it's just a mental illness, they couldn't help it, right? That's just... It is also just as true that when those are at a young age, they are very impressionable, and when exposed to content they shouldn't read at a young age, it also leads to traumatization. Here, come closer. Right, can I be honest with you? I've been the victim of, what I'm talking about, right? And during my middle teenage years, I got off to some pretty abhorrent things. For example, what the video we're, we're reacting to is talking about. But you wanna know what? I learned that it was wrong, right, by the time I was an adult. And now it makes me stick to my stomach like any normal person. So what are we talking about here? What is the problem?
In the language of the cultural zeitgeist, the word pedophile has been turned into something inherently sinister in nature.
I just wanted to play the last part of that sentence, but just in case nobody says I left something out, that's the entire thing. That is the worst sentence ever made by man. Pedophile is a sinister word, and it always has been. Despite you saying you don't support child exploitation material, using the word inherently just makes it seem like you're brushing it under the rug. That definitely seems like a contradiction. Now, in case it's a little hard to follow along, the average thought process is that someone taking advantage of a child, right, is a monster, right? And I think that's perfectly reasonable, and I don't understand why anyone would think it's okay to defend. Okay, look, let's say you have a child, right? Would you be okay with people having thoughts of violating them? No, of course not. In your own words, I don't think anybody should trust you around a child.
It would be remiss of me to claim there's never any overlap, fringe or otherwise.
And that is where you are wrong. Saying the only problem people have with is actual CP is that it's because it uses real children is being dishonest. Pedophile sympathizers screaming, think about the real kids, is exactly what people are thinking about when this kind of content is brought up and made in the first place, and why it needs to be so heavily scrutinized. The content you like to play yourself to about some sodas and lollies, which let's call a spade for what it is, right? Depictions of little boys and girls. This is a very real pipeline due to the extreme natures of dojins. That's not even taking into account of what artificial intelligence has done to affect this. Now these twisted and ill individuals are getting a clear idea on what they're going to get. An easier way to play out their Sick fan. I can't. I can't keep talking. This is disgusting.
If someone has any sort of sexual interest in kids, they're a horrible monster, is the average thought process. But what's really important, especially if you wish to have empathy for people that are different.
Ironic you're insinuating yourself to be an empath here. We'll see why that's funny in a moment.
The thought of being attracted to the nature of a child is not a crime in of itself, and treating it like that is not only wrong, but, again, borderline fascist.
I'm gonna say a fucking slur. They just admitted to liking kids. Okay, look, there is a difference between criminalizing a thought, which is understandably impossible, right? But that's not the point of what's trying to be made here, alright? People who have these thoughts should seek help or should be institutionalized. To bring up before, how would you feel if somebody was thinking about violating your child? You want them locked up, or at the very least rehabilitated. Pedophilia is not normal. Fascism doesn't affect pedophiles because that insinuates pedos have a normal place in society.
Many of these people don't ever want to hurt a child. They deal with this through therapy, trying to find ways to ignore and separate themselves from these thoughts.
Yes, thank you! That is what we, or at the very least I'm, trying to say. Go seek therapy. Go get help. There is nothing wrong with admitting you have a problem. Everybody struggles with something. It is up to you to get that help. And then if you fail, then it makes you the problem.
It fulfills the deep-seated need of that person dealing with pedophilic thoughts without a child being involved at any point.
I can't believe I need to say this, but porn of kids, even children, is not a need. Nobody needs this.
The biggest lolly zine in Japan, Comic LO, is working with this exact idea. It is intentionally marketed at people who have these thoughts, yes, but a big message which is littered about every issue is to never act on them in reality.
Alright, 2 points here, alright. First of all, lolly zine? Look, I read messed up shit because why not? But from when you flashed it earlier when talking about child abuse, and the fact the type of work this makes it look like it's adjacent to Playboy magazines? This Comic LO seems like its sole purpose is to appease pedophiles. And also, so you're saying this magazine series is vouching for a great example of depictions of child porn, is actively telling you to seek help? So what's been your argument? Time and time again, this is what it's like we're trying to talk about here, right? We're telling you to get help, but you're acting like this is some gotcha for the greater good? Again, I'm not going to play the audio just to save both of us here. However, you quote yet another work with the glaringly obvious fact that it's been 25 years old before traditional smartphones had started becoming a thing, leaving a giant gap in your argument. Then you have this comment, which Sam had never replied to because they only like people that'll jerk them off. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier when you cannot trust all of your sources either because children keep secrets. God knows how many children have been harmed because of this new digital age and lack of parental supervision, and the perpetrator never gets caught.
It's just wrong. It's just gross. Real kids will be hurt. You're the reason they hate us.
Alright, so it is wrong, and real kids will get hurt. People like you that try to act like this is some sort of right is exactly why people hate you. What you consume doesn't contribute anything to society. You masturbate to the thought of little kids. It's cut and dry. I'm sorry, but that's what you're getting off to. You're either getting off to the thought they're emotionally immature, incapable of consenting, how small they are, or something like that. There are real works out there that at the very least try and take this seriously. The fact you fail to see that in any of your arguments is disappointing.
A lot of this is also said under the guise of encouraging others to fix themselves. A common refrain is simply get help. It's used to imply concern and empathy, while ultimately shaming an individual for their beliefs, and forcing this ableist perception of unwell onto them.
Again, I wanted to only go off of the first sentence, but just in case anybody thinks I'm trying to manipulate this, right? I decided to play out the whole paragraph or whatever the fuck, right? So there's nothing wrong with getting help. The fact that you have a problem with people encouraging you to better yourself proves that you're the problem, And don't you dare act like it's ableist either, because as someone who was discriminated and bullied because of my learning disabilities, you're not going to act like your very real attraction to kids is something to be proud of. This video is an insult to everyone who watches it. Anyone who supports this should rewatch the video and really try and look what they're trying to say, more than just trying to be an edgy contrarian or somebody that wants an excuse to jerk to child porn.
Problem. And this very mindset, despite often being spread by people who label themselves as queer-friendly or woke, even other trans people just like me, seems shockingly familiar, especially if you keep up with some recent events. In 2025, religious and queerphobic activists like Collective Shout.
No. You do not get to use what happened with Collective Shout as an excuse to be attracted to children. While it is unfortunate what they did, if you take a look at what was removed, a decent majority of the content stripped down was content with no higher meaning, or it was illegal anyway. You're also oh so controversial as a trans person saying Christians are bad. Oh, Ben, shocker, you're anti-capitalist. Just move to China, you'll fit right in. This video speaks volumes about them as a character. First and foremost, this is a sign of being chronically online. I would suggest going outside and, unironically, touching grass, or going on walks, or hiking more frequently. Secondly, you need help. Not just to be a moral fag about it. I know therapy was talked about. From what it sounds like to me, this is an addiction. And addictions can be broken. It's okay if you can't do it yourself. That's perfectly normal. There's support groups out there that can help. On top of, what it sounds like to me is that you need some new friends. If you talk to any of them about this, they would have told you how bad of an idea it is. Most importantly, friends are there to help you in your times of need and urge you to overcoming a problem, like this is right here. In the description, I'll have a few sources for anyone who struggles with a mental illness like this. This entire situation should be seen as a call for help, pretty much. But hey, what do I know? It's not like I was mentally unstable minor with a little bit of access to the internet, traumatized by it. As for the video itself they made, it is intellectually dishonest, ignorant, and manipulative. Furthermore, it shows the author's lack of basic empathy, which they so like to proclaim throughout. I cannot tell if they did this on purpose, or if they are genuinely too close-minded to understand the problems, the stuff they are preaching about. For myself and what to think about my own video, thank you at the very least for clicking on it. I'm not going to act like you can't call me names or whatever, but do know I disable comments by default. Thank you for watching, and remember, be critical and be kind.